Hello everyone, I'm Greg Weaver. Welcome to the Audio Analyst. Pardon me. Over the years, some things just come to be accepted truths. You don't necessarily have to choose to go looking for them or to even think about them. They just rear their heads time and again to the point where you finally catch on. Beginning in the late 1970s, I started to compile a list of observations that were becoming, to me at least, indisputable audio truths. Now, this list evolved and took cognitive shape over the years and uncountable listening sessions. Now, if you are wondering what an axiom is, Merriam-Webster defines it as a statement that is accepted as true as the basis for argument or inference, an established rule or principle or self-evident truth, a maxim widely accepted on its intrinsic merit. So let's look at the audio analyst's audio axioms. I think the best place to start would be with the first one, the one that started me thinking that there may actually be more to discover. And in fact, this first one is the one that inadvertently launched my audio journalism career back in 1988. Axiom number one, cables are components. It was this observation, motivated by what I heard during my experimentation with Noli's monster cables when they were first released in 1979, that inspired the research that led to the body of my first serious article, Loudspeaker Cable, Simple Passive Connection or Complex Dynamic Component, in 1988. It published in the first issue of my magazine. And in fact, it led to Harmonic Technology contracting me in 1999 to lead their design team in developing the original line of their magic cables. But it should come as no real surprise that the realization of a world-class interconnect, speaker cable, or power cord might follow a path akin to that taken in Formula Racing, requiring the unique, effective implementation of at least four key essential elements: conductive materials, constructing geometry, dielectric, and termination. The choices, management, and interrelationship of those four categories are what are responsible for the wide-ranging differences we observe in cables today. Each and every different cable has its own sonic signature. Some do much more to affect the result of the signal coursing through them than others. By listening to many, many cables over time, you can slowly calibrate your own sonic yardstick and become able to differentiate cables that are subtractive and which are additive. And it's really exciting then when you come upon those that just get it right. They don't have any subtractive or additive issues, and they just bloom and work. It's great. The thing is, this is such an enormously full and wide-ranging subject that I may dedicate an entire episode or two to it in the future. But when building your system, you would be wise to treat your cable selection with as much care and attention as you give every other component you are selecting. Audio axiom number two, everyone needs a subwoofer. Now, this maxim has been modified to include or a true full range speaker, one that will play the lowest musical octave faithfully. I can hear you now. What is he, some kind of bass freak? And while I freely admit to really needing to feel my room pressurized to recordings like the Poco Adagio from Camille Saint-Saëns' Symphony No. 3, or from the opening cut 2049 on the superb original motion picture soundtrack to Blade Runner 2049. But that's only a small part of what led to the birth of this postulate. This is not about shaking the walls or loosening the plaster. It's about musical balance, sound staging, and imaging. Now, for reasons that I've not heard anyone clearly articulate, systems that cannot reproduce the lowest octaves accurately in both pitch definition and extension don't create the same sense of space and focus as those that do. The full breadth and air of the soundstage, the complete depth and width of the acoustic environment, even the fundamental octave-to-octave tonal balance, just don't develop to their full potential when the system cannot reproduce faithfully the information below 40 Hertz. Audio axiom number three, make only one change at a time. Now, when you think about it, This is so obvious, but I've seen people ignore it more often than you would expect. When you're trying to identify ways to improve your current system, you should never even think about making more than one change at a time. Yet, I've seen people replacing their current preamp with a different one they wish to consider and change the interconnects to their amplifiers at the same time. Now, you have absolutely no way of knowing which attributes you are now hearing from the preamp or the interconnects. And let's take a more subtle example, okay? Say that you want to try a new pair of speaker cables, but in the process of installing them, you move the speakers too. Was it the placement change or the cables that are making the difference? You really have no way of knowing. Honestly, something as seemingly innocuous as changing the tension on the speaker binding posts can make a notable change in how a system deals with staging, imaging, treble, and low-level detail. So be sure to make only one change to your system at a time so you can confidently isolate the resultant sound. Audio axiom number 4, subtractive evaluation. What this means is that even though the addition of something new to a system may affect an immediate change, that may not be the best way to come to an accurate assessment of that sonic change made by that substitution. And as we listen and the product we installed runs in and settles, we become accustomed to the slow but continuous changes that are occurring during that time. And after weeks of listening to the new item, it can be exceedingly difficult to accurately recall the original sound. The effects of any change to a system are most graphically and accurately noted when that change is removed and you revert back to the old system, giving you the best likelihood to detect and assess the real differences. Now, I'm sorry to say that even this method is tainted, but it's the least sullied method I've uncovered yet. Okay. Audio axiom number 5. Everything needs run-in time. Everything. From that new DAC or transport down to a new digital or signal cable must be burned in, seasoned, conditioned, whatever you wish to call it, by hours and hours of play before it can be properly evaluated. Most people have come to accept that a loudspeaker, fresh from the box, is stiff and unnatural sounding. It is easy to understand that the mechanical properties of the drivers, the surround, the spider, the cone itself, flex and relax with extended use. Now, through this run-in time, they loosen up and become more compliant. And only after some time, anywhere from perhaps 100 hours to as much as 1,000 hours of play in some cases, will a speaker fully reveal its native abilities. Now, I've included a link below the video here to the GR Research website, where Danny Ritchie shows documented measured changes to driver performance specifications from right out of the box over varying periods of time with measurable differences happening at even the 80-hour mark. They're documented measurements that change as far as 80 hours out. It's significant. Now, many people have difficulty making the next logical step, the one that says electronic components and even cables require the same courtesy. But it's demonstrable. I mean, it is. As capacitors form, resistors repeatedly heat and cool, as wires condition, especially the dielectric and insulating materials in the cables. The sound experience changes, sometimes rather dramatically, especially those that employ Teflon for any use. Okay, and to deal with the extraordinary length of time cables can take, especially phono cables and interconnects because of the lower voltage and current that they typically have to carry, I use a cable burner. Okay, this is a purpose-built device that will let you accelerate the burn-in time by injecting wide-ranging frequency sweeps at voltages and variable currents typically higher than your cables may ever be presented under normal playback conditions. And it reduces weeks and weeks of in-play run-in time to days or even hours in some cases, especially when it comes to reburning in. I reburn my cables. It varies. It depends. I won't say I do it every month. That's not true. I probably do it every 2 to 3 months. It depends. Some cables more often, but audio axiom number 6. Oddly enough, it's called the 6 P's. Yeah. The 6 P's stand for piss, poor power, and or power supplies. Prevent proper performance. Okay. So when the power coming from your wall isn't clean or stable, or the rectified power coming out of your power supply in your various components isn't the best it can be, neither is your music. One of the first upgrades I made in the 80s to verify this postulate was to my Accuphase P300 power amplifier. Very popular amp in its day. It was killer. I removed the internal Sprague 40,000 microfarad electrolytic power supply filter caps and replaced them with an outboard set, they were much bigger, of Panasonic computer grade 65,000 microfarad caps. What magic! Faster and better bass, better pitch definition, more focused sound staging and imaging, cleaner transients, better low-level detail, just to mention a few of the most obvious improvements. Now, this is not the kind of thing the uninitiated should try at home, kids. It takes knowledge and skill. But the more accessible way for most users to tame this problem is with the addition of a proven power conditioner to your system. Now, if the bucks aren't available for such a device, then you can experience something similar by listening to your system later in the evening. Usually, by about 9 p.m. or so, the power grids have settled in most areas. So much so that your system can often sound remarkably better. Now, typically, you will find better resolution in the quiet sections of recordings. Imaging and sound staging become more focused and more stable. Timbre is rendered more truthfully, as are the harmonics of the system overall. Give it a try. You just might find yourself making more time to listen later in the day. Or maybe splurging on a good power conditioner, like the Audience Adept Response or the PS Audio Direct Stream Regenerators. Those are both excellent conditioners. Audio axiom number 7. Rooms are components. Folks, this is one of the most ignored of all the platitudes. In fact, it's so important that I recently did 2 videos on the subject here, episodes 4 and 5, to try to do the subject justice. So go back and take a look at those if you'd like. Audio axiom number 8. Isolate everything. If you haven't learned this one yet, go back and spend some more time with it. I've unleashed otherwise unrealized performance with the installation of the Critical Mass Systems center stage 2-footers under most of my electronics. I even isolate my Audience Adept Response power conditioner using 3 specialized brass cones. It's great. I mean, proper isolation takes room, floor, and shelf excitation out of the equation. Isolation pucks, cones, spheres, even inner tubes, as I wrote about in my synergizing call back in the fall of 1998. Let the equipment shine through without the coloration that floor-borne shelf vibrations introduce. Now, when these vibrations find their way back into your equipment, most notably with digital or analog sources and tubed electronics, low-level detail is destroyed, timbre is skewed, space is congested, noise floors are accentuated, and instruments are slurred. Okay, it is cheaper than you think to do effectively, and one of the most cost-effective ways to get closer to the musical truth. Audio axiom number 9. Everything makes a difference. It may sound like I'm stating the obvious, but it truly does. Listen to the difference something as simple as leaving a wrench used to snug your speaker binding posts on top of your line stage can cause. No, really, listen. I mean, moving a component on a shelf, letting the speaker cables lie on thick carpeting, placing components too close to each other, over-tightening a speaker binding post, changing the way a signal cable touches a shelf or doesn't touch a shelf. Literally everything has a sonic impact. Just unplugging and reattaching your interconnects will change the resultant sound. For better or worse, we can debate each one on its own merit, either way. But the better your system, the more profound that effect will be. Now, this premise has a somewhat negating effect on the subjective evaluation postulate, but hey, what can you do? You have to have some type of system where you have no structure for evaluation, right? Well, I hope these 9 little aphorisms can help you along your pilgrimage toward audio nirvana in some manner. Now, if you've discovered any other such self-evident truths in your own quest, write me in the response section below the video. I do read and respond to those postings, okay? Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying our conversations. And thank you again so much for dropping by. Please stay safe and keep music playing, guys. Till next time, cheers.